Good evening and welcome along to NUFC Matters with me, Steve Wraith. And tonight's special guest is Rob McDonald. Good evening, Rob. How are you?
Good evening. I'm fine, thanks.
Yeah, thanks for joining us, mate. A real blast from the past for me, and it had me going into me loft and digging through me programs to try and find a few photographs. So I am going to share them with the viewers. There's one there, which is if we can just get it past the green screen, there we go. That's Rob on the front page of the program, and Rob coming out of the tunnel as well. I might have to put these on Twitter. There we go. That's it. But yeah, great days. I mean, in the sense that those were my first days going to the match on my own without my dad. And we'll go back to the start of your career first, Rob. Where did you start playing professional football?
I started Hull City. I was an apprentice, and I passed my apprenticeship. And John Kay was the manager at the time. He signed me as a pro, so I stayed there for about 3 years as a pro. And then this Dutch club came over, and that more or less is the reason why I took the step to go over to Holland. I just found at that time that, the English game just didn't seem to suit me. I know that sounds a crazy thing, but for me, for being a big lad, and I was quick, running into channels and crossing the ball for somebody who was a lot smaller than me, that just didn't make sense to me. And it was the best move I ever made, if I'm really honest.
Yeah.
So, my career went absolutely up. So that's more or less the beginning of my career at Hull City.
Yeah. Were you always a centre forward, Rob?
What they did, there was one stage when all the centre halves were injured. Our captain, Stuart Croft, he's also a Geordie lad. They all got injured. So with me being tall and good in the air and everything, I played at the back, and I found that a lot easier, but it was just boring. I just thought, it's not my cup of tea. So I just went into the manager, and the manager at that time was Ken Houghton, an ex-Hull City player. I just said, boss, put me up front again because I'm just not enjoying it, and I don't want a career as a centre-half.
How did you find it then after going from Hull and plying your trade abroad? Did you find it easy? I mean, nowadays it's something which is always, it's almost looked at as the norm, to get a little bit of experience abroad. We've got Matty Longstaff at the moment being linked with a move at a young age to Udinese, which obviously Newcastle fans hope doesn't happen. But what was it like for you? Was the language a barrier? Did you find that the locals maybe weren't as welcoming as you were hoping they were going to be? How was it?
No, I went to be honest, in the beginning, I went to a decent club. And when I say a decent club, they were quite friendly. They were football fanatical in many ways, very much like what Newcastle is in England. A really good following. The Dutch, they speak better English than we do, so that wasn't so much of a problem. And I think just the fact that they played 4-3-3, okay, the physical part of it is not as intense as what it is with the English game. I've got to be honest about that as well. But the great thing was that I was getting loads of service from both the wings. Right wingers who would cross the ball with the right foot, and left wingers who would cross the ball with the left foot. You don't see that often.
No.
And it just suited me. It just, I just thought straight away, tactically, I learned much more in the first 2 years than I did in my whole time at Hull City. And no disrespect to any of the coaches at Hull City, but it just seemed to, enter my head, and I thought, this is easy, this is good, I'm enjoying it. It was a real challenge.
Yeah. Good stuff. So, you applied your trade over there for a while, didn't you? Your big move came in '85 when you went to PSV Eindhoven. What was the experience like playing there?
That was great. I had a really good period, the 3 years previous to that at FC Groningen. we played European Cup football. We knocked Atletico Madrid out, and we got beaten by Inter Milan. So I think my period at FC Groningen was the basis for the future following on. PSV, I'm playing with the likes of Ruud Gullit, Eric Gerrits, you name it, Hans van Breukelen, Ernie Brandt, big names in Dutch football. We won the championship easily. We were, I think, 6 weeks, 7 weeks before the end. We were champions, and I played quite a lot of the games, and enjoyed it. Absolutely loved it. And then when I've gone through my career, if I look at how I've step for step chosen teams, a little bit of a step higher, then another step higher, and then as soon as I won the championship in Holland, I thought I want to go to another country, and that's when Sporting Lisbon came knocking. So it was a perfect way and a perfect baptism, if you want to call that, to go on to other things abroad.
Do you regret that move? Because I think it was something like 24 games, 15 goals for PSV Eindhoven. Then to leave, and some people would say it's brave, but then other people might say, you should have stayed where you were because you were doing well and you just won the league. Do you regret that, Rob, a little bit?
Nah. Sometimes you've got to assess what the whole situation is. The PSV were bringing in Wim Kieft. Wim Kieft was a top scorer of Ajax for many years. He was also a national player for Holland. Now, in some respects, I wasn't really frightened of battling against him. Mm. But the thing is that I just knew for myself, I've always had this adventurous streak in me anyway. So I thought to go to Portugal and such a huge club as Sporting, I don't regret it in the slightest. Mm. I did know that there was only 2 foreign players were allowed to play. It was a sort of like a ruling what they had. And they had Manuel Negrete, that was the Mexican player who scored the first goal. I can't remember which World Cup it was. He played against Belgium, and it was a sort of like a bicycle kick goal which he scored. Great midfield player, great player. And the other was the striker, was Rafael Mead, who came from Arsenal. And he didn't have such a good season the season before that. But I think with the fact of me coming and putting pressure on him, he only started scoring like bloody nobody's business. So I made my debut in the European Cup against Akranes in Iceland. I scored 3 goals. And I made my debut in the first team away to Boa Vista, and I scored on my debut as well.
Yeah.
It was just the fact that he was playing so well that the manager got me in. He said, "Listen, I can't criticise you at all." He said, "But there's only 2 of you can play." And I was on loan from PSV. So I thought, no. I need to get back. I need to get myself playing somewhere. So in respect of not getting playing time, yes, I agree fully. But the whole experience, what I had at such a huge club, and I mean a huge club, as Sporting Lisbon, no, I wouldn't change that for anything now.
You ended up going back to, was it Groningen for a loan?
Groningen, yeah.
Yeah, for a loan period. And of course, you had big success there. I think over 80 appearances there and over 40 goals, which is some going. Your next move, of course, was to Racing Jet Brussels. Forgive me for my ignorance, but where is that?
That's in Brussels. They played that. They played at a little. They played in a little stadium next to the big IJssel Stadium.
Right.
And what I found really fascinating, because around that period I was starting thinking about coaching.
Yeah.
So I was thinking about my future, what I was going to do in football. And Raymond Goethals, he was the general manager of Racing Jet Brussels. So I thought, this is going to be good. One of the top coaches ever out of Belgium. But after time, I couldn't understand the word he said, because my Dutch was a lot better, but his accent was incredible. And looking back in hindsight, it wasn't the greatest of moves to do, but yeah.
Yeah.
I did learn quite a bit of stuff from his technique, how he how he did tactical stuff. So everywhere you go, you always pick up something. So that was about the only one advantage I had.
Again, another club which I haven't heard of. Ikfast. Where is that?
Yeah. Ikast is Denmark.
Okay.
Well, what had happened? The Belgians, they're famous for this. They sometimes don't pay your wages, and I was on a good crack when I was there. And so Denmark was about the only place I could go. The Scandinavian market is a different ball game when it comes to the transfer market,
right?
Or the deadlines. So I just went to this. They were in the European Cup, Cup Winners. I think it was the Cup Winners Cup, and that was really a waste of my time. I'll be honest. Shocking.
Something that wasn't a waste of your time, because it's the reason we're doing this interview, is you came to Newcastle United, forever a sleeping giant, it seems, since the 1950s. And certainly at the period that you signed in 1988 was going through a huge period of transition. And why and how did you end up at Newcastle United?
Well, why is there's a simple answer. Who on earth on the whole planet would say no to Newcastle United? Remember, I'm a Hull lad who, from the age of 10, had this dream of playing in the English Premiership. It was the first division then. So actually, it was in the period when I'd gone back to PSV after the little stint I had with FC Groningen. Because, like I told you, I was on loan at Sporting and then also at FC Groningen. So what had happened? The agent of Raphael Mead was a Londoner, and I'd never really had an agent previous to that. I just had people, good friends who were businessmen who helped me through my football career. So with that, I got in touch with the agent. His name was Tom Lawrence, and he organised trials for me with. I was at Millwall when Cascarino was there and Teddy Sheringham, and then I also went to Wimbledon. I went there when Bobby Gould was the manager, and then all of a sudden I got an invite up to Newcastle. I came at the same time as Alistair Dick. I don't know if you remember him. He Scottish lad who he was a decent player. And I tell you what, during the week, I was getting balls on the training, from all over the place. And I was just popping in the goals like I was doing in Holland. And it just went really well. And they, after about 2 or 3 days, I signed, Colin Suggett. He was the sort of, like, let's just say, the interim manager at that time. And he got me on board. There was some video clips which had been sent also of games which I'd played, recently. And so it all went through. I mean, I was pinching myself. I was sort of like, I'd played with great players and I played against great players in my career, but still that dream, the English schoolboy dream of playing for a Premiership team, it was, then I had the disadvantage of having a second name, which, was pretty similar to, pretty tasty striker out the past, Malcolm McDonald. And that didn't really bother me, if I'm really honest, because I'm nowhere like the same style as what he was, and he was just a great player, period.
Yeah.
So for me to come in and emulate such a great player as Malcolm, I'm realistic enough to know that that never would have happened. Mm. And in all fairness, Steve, I had an half decent begin when scored in the League Cup against Watford, and I got my debut goal with the game against Sheffield Wednesday. And then just after that, it just crashed in, I think, for everybody, myself included. I'm not gonna hide behind any excuses or whatever. We just crashed in.
Was it an away game at Millwall that you made your debut?
That was my debut. Yeah, we lost 4-0.
I was down there for that game. Yeah, because I remember, because I think there was a big boxing fight on the same night in Birmingham as well, which we travelled to. I think it was one of the Ben Eubank, or was it Ben Watson? I'm not 100% sure off the top of my head. But yeah, I mean, that day, it was it as frightening for players going to Millwall as it was for fans? Because I remember walking down the streets, you had to walk down people's streets to get to the old Cold Blow Lane ground, and it was vitriolic. You were getting spat at and things thrown at you, and that was by the women pushing pushchairs.
No, I didn't. I think the overriding emotion for me was just the fact I was making my debut there, and of course I knew about the reputation what Millwall had. But believe you me, when I was younger, in Hull, in that Harbour City, it can be pretty rough down there as well. So I mean, if we ever ventured into the city centre, and I'm talking about maybe on a like a Saturday night, you've got to be careful there as well. So I mean, everywhere you go, you're gonna have something. But no, like I said, the overriding experience what I had at that time was just the fact that I made my debut, and I was really well peeved that we lost 4-0. I did actually score a goal which was offside, a damn good header, which I didn't think was offside. But anyway, we still wouldn't have won the game. They were good. Millwall was a good team at that time.
Did you get to pull on the number 9 jersey?
Well, it shifted. At one time I'd have number 8, and then I'd have 9. I mean, I didn't go into the manager and say, look, I don't want the number 9 because it's the number of Malcolm.
Yeah.
Not at all. I just got given the number I was given. I mean, you don't, in them days, you don't go in and say, look, I want number this or I want number that. That didn't happen at all. So
it's different nowadays. But yeah, I mean, looking back on my program collection from that era, you're quite right. You wore the number 8 and the number 9. So did you ever get a chance to meet those players, the likes of Jackie Milburn at the time, and
no.
or Supermark? Were they at the games, or did you get a chance to meet them?
No, I never saw. I definitely didn't see Malcolm McDonald in the time I was there. I'd love to have met him. Don't get me wrong. No, there would be every now and then there'd be ex-players what would be there, but I mean I didn't get the chance to meet them personally in the players' home. I think it was the majority of the time, like agents and the wives and that sort of stuff. So no, not a lot.
Tell us about some of the players that you were playing with there. I mean, who did you room with when you were travelling away? I mean, you look.
John Henry.
Mm-hmm.
Nah, try and understand him when he's beginning. He had this strong Scottish accent, but great lad. I mean, great lad. And they're often what I often had with the lads. They were really curious about the whole Dutch thing. All my experiences which I had abroad. What money was you on, and what was gullet like, and all stuff like that, which I understand. And more or less figuring out how we can, because John was on the right hand side. So what I like to do is when I used to sort of like room, I would room with either one of the wingers or somebody who's just behind me, so that you can also talk about tactical stuff and little moves and little signals what you can give, that type of stuff.
Yeah.
So he was a good lad, John. He was a good lad. Now we had John Anderson was with us, Kenny Sampson, Davy McCreary, Andy Thorne, Dave Besant. Who else did we have? Kevin Brock, he was a good player. He was an underestimated player, to be honest.
Yeah.
A good player. Nice bloke. And, no, I mean, great set of lads. I mean, you know, when we trained and everything, it was there was a good atmosphere. We just give what we could, but we just weren't good enough at that time. It's, you know, you just got to be open and honest about it.
Jim Smith came in as manager, and we've got a question from Mark Corby, who runs a page on Facebook, NUFC 1980 to 1994. He said, "Can you ask Rob how Jim Smith dealt with him? Rob played 6 games off the belt in all competitions, scoring 2 goals. Then he was dropped for Frank Pingle, and he never got a look in afterwards. So he's interested to know, you know, what the situation was there, because you weren't in poor form. You know, you were settling into a new club. Then suddenly Frank Pingle comes in. What was the situation, and what did Jim Smith say to you?"
Well, in some ways, I was thinking, well, did he want to play 2 big men up front? Because Frank he wasn't as tall as what I was, but he was a big lad. And in all fairness, Mirandinha, he wasn't really getting a great, you know, deal of goals neither. So, Michael O'Neill, he was the one actually who was, you know, popping up with a couple of goals here and there. So, I think every manager who comes in, a new manager certainly, he has his own ideas, he has his own vision, and he maybe didn't like what he saw with me. I mean, you know, fair dues, he is the boss. So, I mean, I scored under him because, funnily enough, the game, Watford, was, I think, his 2nd game. And the goal I scored against Sheffield Wednesday, you know, Jim was manager there as well. So, I mean, I did have a period when I felt for myself I wasn't playing as well as I should do. So, I mean, I'm not going to give all the you know, all the blame to the manager. And I had a couple of bad games, which, you know, in England yourself, you only have to play 2 or 3 bad games after each other. Then, you know, you can be out on a limb. And Frank Pingle was actually offered to the club at that time, and I think Frank scored 1 when he came. I'm not even sure if
I'll have to check.
He did score.
I remember a rather fortuitous goal against Liverpool, which was a header which he didn't know much about, which flew into the net past Bruce.
I remember that. Yeah, it was really bad weather. I remember that. Oh.
Yeah,
I was sat on the bench, and I'm not used to sitting on the bench, but anyway, it happened, and yeah, it's just one of them things where you think I would have loved to have come to Newcastle when I was, let's just say, instead of going to Sporting, when I was 26, that would have been the ideal time for me to have gone to Newcastle. I mean, I was 30, and like I said, I had a half decent begin, which I was quite happy about. And then after that, it wasn't the Rob McDonald what I would have liked to have seen to play for Newcastle United.
Mark Corby also asks, he wants to know what your celebration against Sheffield Wednesday was all about. He's a bit of a collector, Mark, and he's got a YouTube channel which you'd probably be interested to see. But he's got this clip of that game on there, and your goal celebration was, you stand still and you do like a gymnastic type warm up. So he was just interested in what that celebration was all about.
Dead easy. If he looks at it carefully, it's the signal what an Australian referee gives when it's kicked between the 2 poles.
Like that.
When I played at PSV, we had a right winger. He was a right character. René van der Gijp is his name, and he did that. And for some reason, because when I scored my goal, I just put my fist in the air, which is generally how I celebrate a goal.
Mm-hmm.
But because of the fact that it was the winning goal, the second goal, because I flicked it into Michael O'Neill, and how on earth he scored, I don't know. He sort of like stumbled over the ball, but it went in. And I think it was just at that moment, it was a crazy moment where I thought, you know what, I'll do that, because Liam O'Brien started running towards me, and he saw me doing the, all the arm gestures, and he just ran straight away over to Michael O'Neill. So it's just a moment of the excitement of winning the game, because it was a crucial game for us at that time, and so that's basically it. I've never done that in another game. It was just that moment. So sorry, Mark.
He also says your home debut was a 0-0 draw with Man United live on television, with the supporters singing "Sack the Board" all game and having a sit-in protest afterwards. Did you realise how much politics was going on behind the scenes, and do you think that affected the players?
Well, listen, Steve. If you're rock bottom of the division, it doesn't matter, even if you've got the nicest people who are going to be board directors or God knows what. Newcastle should not be at the bottom. You know, Newcastle should be at least middle of the table. So there's always going to be that pressure. I think for any player who's going to be playing in the Premiership, bear in mind about the mental health problems what a lot of players are suffering with nowadays, simply because of the stress of what football brings with it. And no, I just think we went onto the field to do our best, and like I said, we had a good set of lads. There was no bickering, there was no backstabbing or God knows what. We just had a good set of lads, but we just weren't good enough at that time, period.
Yeah. Elzik Mag, he asked a question, and I think you answered it at the start. You were on trial at first with another player who wasn't taken on. Can you remember who that was? Now, I'm presuming that was Alistair Dick, was it?
Yeah.
Where did he end up then?
Phew.
No idea.
I think he went back to Scotland. I think he went to Hibs. If I'm not mistaken, I think he signed for Hibs.
Yeah. Okay. Well,
you can better ask Darren Jackson, because I think Darren was, if I'm not mistaken, I think he knew him quite well. Mm-hmm. And Darren's a bit of a wheeler and a dealer now in the football world. And I think he might have helped Alistair at that time. I'm not sure.
I will definitely ask Darren that question. The Duke 3000, Stephen, thanks for your question. He says, although Rob's done well managing various clubs, does he think enough has been done to help former footballers once their short careers have ended? Footballers from pre-Premier League weren't on the glittering wages footballers are now. He also says, and what do footballers who aren't household names do when they retire? I've heard so many different stories, from working as a DPD driver to working on a market stall. There just isn't enough punditry jobs for all the former footballers. So what's life like on the other side?
Yeah, no, that's a really good question, and bear in mind, I think what a lot of footballers need to also remember is that because we tend to neglect our school days, I think it's a lot better now. If you haven't got any diplomas or whatever, you're not going to get anywhere. So if you feel as though football's the only talent what you've got, I mean, I've been fortunate, really fortunate. The fact that I went into coaching, and I was helping, trying to get coaches abroad, Dutch coaches abroad to clubs, and what I'm doing now is more or less trying to help clubs find investors and investors find clubs. So what I've done, I've deliberately utilised my network. So I've made sure that I always keep my name and everything in the picture. You'll find a lot of players will go into scouting. They've got a good idea about football, stuff like that. Coaching. Now, if you look at the whole picture, and especially if I'm looking at England, there's a lot of foreign coaches are going over there now. So that's putting English people out of a job. Whether a lot of the footballers, knowing that the career is coming to an end, do they also invest in time for themselves? Do they maybe go and learn some trades? Do they maybe go and try and get some, O levels or certificates or diplomas or God knows what? Try and find out what they're good at. But I think the biggest thing you need to do, and especially with football, you see, we have one big advantage. We generate a network around ourselves. So you have to use people. Then people used you when you was a footballer. So you make sure that you're going to use your network to try and help you when times when you really need it. So and just have some good people you can lean back on, have a good chat to. Even when you're going through a bad time, you can't get a job. It's always good to talk about it, because there's a lot of pride going on as well, because not many footballers will say, I've got no money, I'm out of money, can you help? Can you do this? Can you do that? So I think you just got to be open and try and get some good honest feedback, and maybe sometimes you have to be a taxi driver, or you maybe have to work in a supermarket, or God knows what, but do it just to make sure that you've got the income, and then work on other things. There's a lot of academies which have been set up now in and around, also in the northeast. I mean, God blimey, it's the sort of like the bed of all fanatical footballers, and it's such a passionate thing there that you could do many things within football as well, even if it means you help within a community, and do work maybe for nothing, but build into something. And who knows, that a company or something maybe sponsor you, or you become an ambassador. Try and look for something. If you're going to sit at home and think, oh, woe is me, and I dare tell anybody that I've not got any money and I haven't got a job, you're going to struggle. You're going to struggle big time. So look for help.
Good advice. Gavin Marsh says, did you ever see Kevin Dillon score in training?
Yeah, he was he was a decent player, actually.
He's a good player, but to be honest, in the 60-odd games he played for Newcastle, he was always my bet for first goal. And ironically, never scored a goal in his career at Newcastle. And then on his debut,
he did score in training.
On his debut,
he did, yeah.
On his debut for Reading, when he left Newcastle, of course he scored on his debut, and I didn't put the bet on.
Yeah.
Right. Newcastle United now. Obviously, we're just coming off the back of an FA Cup quarter-final exit, so the mood on Tyneside isn't exactly joyous at the minute. Do you watch Newcastle at the moment? Do you still keep in touch with your old team?
Well, there's nobody. There's only the physio. What's it called him now?
Derek Wright.
The bald-headed. Is it Derek?
Derek Wright. Yeah.
Yeah. Great bloke. He's about the only one, I think, at the club who I know. Russell left, Russell Cushion.
Yeah.
So, I mean, as far as Kenny, is Kenny still at the club? Kenny Wharton?
No.
Yeah. So, no. No, it's such a long time ago. No, I mean, I follow it. I'll be honest, I do look for the result for Newcastle, see how they're getting on together with Hull City.
Mm-hmm.
And but no, I mean, I really, really like Steve Bruce, and I'm a bit partial because of the fact that he did really well at Hull City, and I never would have dreamt Hull City would ever play in the Premiership. And that they'd play in an FA Cup final, which I was there. And he did that for us. And he's just got something about him where, he gets results, and he's got a good. I think he's one of these who can easily talk with players. He seems to be a likeable sort, but yet he knows his stuff. Yeah, he might play defensive sometimes, but if he feels as though it's going to get him a result. Because I mean, Manchester City didn't like, because I remember looking at the interview Kevin De Bruyne gave, and that he said it's, you know, it's just not an easy place to play. So and they're not in any problems, you know. This must be one of the most relaxing years what I think a Newcastle supporter has had, knowing that they're not going to get relegated. Okay, the situation with you know, with Mike Ashley, is the club going to be sold? Yes or no? That's, you know, that's another thing. But I think Steve's done a good job, and they look exciting. I think the lads up front are looking exciting. Okay, the poor boy has took ages to score a goal, but he's still helping within the team.
Mm-hmm.
You know, he's a good target man. So no, I think it looks good. It looks good at the moment.
Yeah, I mean, look, I would agree with you. Newcastle's season this season hasn't been as worrying or nail biting because, you know, points have been in the bag early, and like you say, it's more or less mathematically, you know, certain Newcastle will be in the Premier League next year with investment coming in. Hopefully, you know, do you think that will improve Newcastle's fortunes if this Saudi takeover goes through? And would you allow Steve Bruce to continue? Would you expect him to continue as manager or head coach as he is?
Listen, Steve, we know what new owners are like these days. Listen, if you come in as a new owner and you've got Jurgen Klopp at the top of you know, the club, then it's always a damn sight easier. Whether they'll allow Steve to carry on, I'm not too sure about that. You just don't know. You see, I've got a little bit of experience of it now about how certain owners look at, or let's just say potential investors, how they look at taking over a club and what they want to do. Now, you just don't know what sort of links they've got with people who want to also go into the club, and they're part of the deal, if you understand what I mean.
Yeah.
Let's just say the Saudis, they might have a group of people they want to go into the club. Now, I think if you change a hell of a lot of stuff when you take over a club, you're guaranteed you're going to have problems. You can better just come in, have a look, maybe bring one or two men to come in just to sort of like give you the information about how the club's rocking and rolling and that sort of stuff. And then slowly see how it goes. I think once you come in like a bull in a china shop, I just don't think you've got a hell of a chance at all, for the simple fact that Newcastle is a sensitive club. They've got a lot of good people around the club. And I think you've got to be extremely careful how you take over the club.
I want to thank everybody for their questions. I'm going to ask you, you know, a couple more. What are you up to now then, Rob? Obviously, you went from, you know, you retired from football and you went into coaching management. What was that like for you? What was the experience like on the other side of the fence?
It's a hell of a lot easier when you're a player, because then they're just dependent on you. You know, I'm a striker. I've got to score. If I don't score, we lose. That's the you know, I mean, it's a bit black and white how I'm expressing it. But when you're a manager, you're not only dependent on your players. You've got your supporters. You've got your staff. You've got sponsors. You've got everybody within the club wants a little bit of you, and it's all got to be nice and calm, and they've got to be happy. It's a big responsibility. Bear in mind just how much time, you know, consuming time, what it takes from an individual. I think that's the reason why there's about 12 or 13 people now on a bench. In my days, it was about 2 or 3, and that was it, you know. But now it's much more, you know, the load is spread around. But no, I really, really enjoyed it because I'd been through a lot. You know, I come from a background with, you know, divorced parents. My dad left when I was like 8, and my mum, she brought up 3 kids with nothing, and all 3 of us have done well. And you know, so the experiences I've had as a young kid, you know, growing up, I could pass that on to the youth players in the beginning when I was coaching the youth, and then when I went over to the first team, excuse me, you know, I had a really good career which I could pass on, you know, information to them. So, and I was always I wanted to play attacking football, and that's the reason why it was great that I did all my diplomas in Holland. I did go over to England, and I did both the preliminary and the full badge. So I got them as well. I just thought, Rob, go, you know, just go and do it. You never know when it might come in handy if I get a chance to take over, you know, an English club. So I loved it in many ways. And then, you know, after a while, you know, you've had good times, and you've had maybe times when the results have not been that great. And then I had heart problems. I had a irregular heart problem, which I had 3 operations on. So that cost me about a good 5 to 7 years. And I'm fully fit now. I mean, I've been declared fit the last 4 years. But I thought, shit, Rob, you got to do something. Come on, you know, think out of the box. So I thought, right, I don't like the idea of being called an agent. I don't like that. I'm a mediator. And the great thing about my career is that I've been able to get in a position where I can get to the decision makers, not to the people under, but to the decision makers. And I took a top coach to a top club in China, which I never, ever in my wildest dreams would have imagined that I could have pulled something off like that. But I'm in for that sort of stuff. And if you know people, then why shouldn't you use your network? And with that, I sort of started getting asked by you know, investors and clubs to find you know, to find or a club or an investor for them. So that's been taking up a lot of my time in the last year, and so I'm really enjoying that. And who knows, you know, something might crop up, even in England.
Any last messages for the Newcastle fans who are watching this tonight?
Listen, just keep loving the club, and I just hope that the money, what will maybe come in with the new owners, will be to get the right players, that they don't, you know, start spending money foolishly on let's just say big names what don't turn out to be big names. Keep the players who are doing really well now, and I'm not too worried about Newcastle. I think it's a sleeping giant. Everybody keeps calling it a sleeping giant. It's just waiting for somebody to wake it up again and get a strike like Shearer or Malcolm McDonald. And you know, I think that once you get a regular goal scorer, I think you're going to be back up there again.
Rob McDonald, been an absolute pleasure, mate. Thanks for coming on NUFC Matters tonight.
My pleasure. Cheers. Take care.